Welcome back to Spooktober for another night of spooky content. Tonight's video is an article that I found. I thought it was extremely interesting, and it turns out that I have covered a couple of things we're going to talk about in this article, and I will be sure to link some of those videos down below. But this is an article I found by Matt Miller and Lauren Crunk called Terrifying But True Horror Stories Reported in the News. And it reads, horror movies can give you a fright, but so can a good ghost story. Suspense is all about timing and gullibility. If you can pull off both, then you've got a hit on your hands. But what happens when the lines between fiction and fact start to blur? You often hear stories of people claiming they've seen ghosts or aliens or other supernatural beings. And if you've turned on the local news, you've heard the stories of a grisly murder or two. Sometimes it's a story that even Stephen King himself couldn't dream up. And that's when you start trusting in the strange. Once in a while, a story of a dreadful disappearance, a demonic possession, or a town full of devil worshippers will land in the local paper. Now, whether it's real or fiction, we often never find out. Maybe they're crazy. Maybe they're right. You be the judge. Below, we've rounded up the most unnerving real-life news tales. In honor of spooky season, here are some of the ones we can't stop thinking about. First up is the Enfield Monster. In 1973, a man in Enfield, Illinois, told reporters that he had seen a weird little creature lurking in his yard. Per the Mount Vernon Register News, resident Harry McDaniel stated, it had 3 legs, a short body, 2 little short arms, and pink eyes as big as flashlights. sent to a nearby hospital before being life-flighted to a medical center in Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office said he had suffered the injury at about 12:45 a.m., which is right around the same time that the Axe Murderers began in 1912. Larson recovered from his injuries, but he has never publicly spoken about what happened. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the house, this incident was very upsetting. She said, "It's publicity, but not exactly the kind that you desire to have. I don't want people thinking that when they come to the Villisca Axe Murder house, something's going to happen that's going to make them do something like that." The house itself remains open for tourist visits and overnight stays. Now, next is something that I swore I would never cover again. However, this is a different one. When you think of haunted dolls, it's likely the creepy old Victorian-looking porcelain dolls, right? None of which you probably maybe have laying around. However, don't get too comfortable with any kids' toys anytime soon. A Disney's Frozen Elsa doll was gifted for Christmas in 2013 in the Houston area, made headlines earlier when it seemingly became haunted. The doll recited phrases from the movie and sang "Let It Go" as a button on its necklace was pressed. For 2 years, it did that in English, Mother Emily Madonia said. But in 2015, it started alternating between Spanish and English. Now, there's not a button on the doll that changed this, and the family had owned the doll for more than 6 years, but never changed its batteries. The mom said that the doll would randomly begin to speak and sing even when its switch was flipped off. So they decided, we gotta get rid of this thing, and in December of 2019, they threw it out. Weeks later, they found it inside a bench in their living room, and the kids insisted that they didn't do it, and she believed them because she didn't think that her kids would have dug through the trash outside. At that point, Elsa ceased to sing the English rendition of "Let It Go" and spoke only Spanish when the button was pressed. The family then double-bagged the bizarre doll and put it at the bottom of the garbage can, which was to be taken out on garbage day. They went on a trip shortly after, but when they returned, Elsa, too, had come back and was waiting in the backyard of their house. At this point, the family mailed her to a friend in Minnesota, who then taped the haunted doll to the front bumper of his truck. And the last time I checked, it did not appear to have made its way back to Houston. Next is an exorcism, which I can't believe we're still doing in the year 2000s, but in August of 2016, in North London, 26-year-old Kennedy Ive began acting strange and aggressive following a pain in his throat. He reportedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own private area, and complained of a python or snake inside of him before his family restrained him to his own bed with cable ties and excessive force. The BBC reported that the family then set about to attempt to cure him through restraint and prayer over the next 3 days. His brother, Colin, told police that it was clear that that thing was in him, and we believed that it was a demon because it was not natural. It was clearly trying to kill him. I'm sorry, I have to get a drink. chanting and praying for Kennedy. All 7 of Kennedy Ives' family members were accused of manslaughter, false imprisonment, and causing or allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. A post-mortem examination of over 60 wounds, including a possible bite on Kennedy's body, and his father Kenneth, along with his 4 brothers, sustained injuries as well. The BBC reported that Kenneth Sr. told jurors that he ordered his sons to take shifts and use overwhelming force, but denied that an association with cults, occults, and secret societies played any part in Kenneth's death. After a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were cleared of charges in March of 2019. Next is a case that I have heard of before, but it is about the Bretzes family. They decided to insulate their home in Auburn, Pennsylvania in 2015, and they discovered that their home already had been insulated with scores of dead animal carcasses. The dead animals were wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s and 1940s, and they were among half-used spices and other items. After removing these items, the family sent hundreds of artifacts and carcasses to an expert in Goostown. The expert attributed the animals in their walls to powwow or Dutch magic, a ritual originating in the culture of the Pennsylvania Dutch to treat ailments and gain physical and spiritual protection. The Pennsylvania Dutch were a group of German-speaking settlers that settled in Pennsylvania in the 1600s and 1700s, and they were often Lutheran, Mennonite, or Amish. The Washington Post notes on the magic that many of the spells deal with the care of livestock, finding water, or the treatment of minor ailments, reflecting the conditions and concerns of early American settlers. But powwow also has within it a tradition of darker spells, even such things as conjuring demons. One notable ritual in the tradition in this sex is to create loyalty in a dog. To attach a dog to a person, provided nothing else was used before to affect it, try to draw some of your blood and let the dog eat it along with his food, and he will stay with you. The mold found on the carcasses in the Bretzes' home had caused illness among the family members, and they say that the odor has not gone away. Yuck. Next is another case that I have seen some of my fellow YouTubers do, but I myself have not. The Florida devil worshipping. Friends noticed that Danielle Harkins, a 35-year-old school teacher near St. Petersburg, Florida, started acting strangely in June of 2012, developing an interest in doing demonic rituals. Soon after, she was arrested for the abuse of 7 of her former students. Danielle told the kids that they needed to rid their body of demons as the group gathered before dusk Saturday around a small fire near the St. Petersburg pier. They should cut their skin to let the evil spirits out, and then they needed to burn the wounds to ensure that the spirits would not return. When Harkins held a lighter to one teen's hand, the wind blew the flame Elisa was last seen January 31st, 2013 in the lobby of the Cecil Hotel in downtown LA. She was vacationing through the West Coast, documenting the trip on her blog and checking in with her parents every day. On January 31st, those calls stopped and Elisa had vanished. Soon, police were involved and her parents arrived to help with the search. However, they had nothing. LAPD released elevator surveillance footage of Elisa before her disappearance. This footage showed her behaving strangely in the elevator, appearing to talk with invisible people, peering around the corner of the door, crouching in the corner, and opening and closing the elevator doors. But what exactly is going on in this video has raised more questions than answers. Theories range from psychotic episodes to demonic possession to unknown assailants just out of the camera's view. Around that time, hotel guests started reporting weird things happening within the Cecil water supply. The shower was all full, said Sabina Bao, who spent 8 days there during the investigation. When you turn the tap on, the water was coming out black for 2 seconds and then going back to normal. The water also tasted horrible. It had a very funny, sweetly disgusting taste. It was really strange. I can barely describe it, but they never complained. She said they didn't think anything of it. They thought that it was just the way it was. On the morning of February 19th, a hotel employee climbed to the roof and used a ladder to investigate the hotel's water storage tanks. And that is where authorities found the decomposing naked body of Elisa Lam, whose personal items were found nearby. Her autopsy said that her death was accidental, and the NBC Los Angeles reported at the time that the hotel had a strange past. I feel like most of us know about the Cecil. Now, the tank that she was found in had a metal latch that could be opened, but access to the roof is secured with an alarm and a lock. The single-room occupancy hotel has an unusual history. Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, who was found guilty of 14 slayings in the 1980s, lived on the 14th floor for several months in 1985. International serial killer Jack Unterweger, suspected of murdering 3 women in the time he lived there in 1991. And in 1962, a female occupant jumped out of one of the windows of the Cecil, hurting not only herself, but the pedestrian on whom she landed. Next up is another exorcism that happened last year. Well, it was reported on last year. The Indianapolis Star published a lengthy report on a family terrorized by 3 children allegedly possessed by demons. I covered this one too, I think, on Patreon, but I'll link it. The accounts of LaToya Amons and her family tells the disturbing story of her children climbing the walls, getting thrown across rooms, and children threatening doctors in deep, unnatural voices. It would seem like something straight out of a movie, except for all of these accounts were corroborated by nearly 800 pages of official records obtained by the Indianapolis Star and recounted with more than a dozen interviews with police, DCS personnel, psychologists, family members, and a Catholic priest. One of the more chilling sections of the report include a segment about the possessed 9-year-old. According to Washington's original DCS report, the 9-year-old had a weird grin on their face and walked backward up a wall to the ceiling. He then flipped over, Campbell landing on his feet, all the while never letting go of his grandmother's hand. Another segment of the piece reads, the 12-year-old would later tell mental health professionals that she sometimes figure out why 2 parents would hurt themselves and 3 of their 4 children. For a year, no one knew exactly what had happened or what would cause the parents to do this. In January, police released more details in this case. According to accounts from family members and an investigation, the parents were driven by a belief that the apocalypse was coming and an obsession with a convicted killer. Friends and family told police that the parents were worried about evil in the world and they wanted to escape the pending apocalypse. Most of them assumed that they just wanted to move somewhere off the grid. Investigators also found letters written by Strack to one of the state's most infamous convicted killers, Dan Lafferty, who was convicted in 1984 for the fatal stabbing of his sister-in-law and her 1-year-old daughter. According to testimony, he had hurt these people in order of his brother, Ron Lafferty, who claimed to have had a revelation from God. The story became a book called Under the Banner of Heaven. Police said that Strack became friends with Dan and that she and her husband even visited him in prison. Now, if all of this sounds familiar to you, it's because I covered this case after I discovered this article, and I will link it down below. Next is the phone stalker. In 2007, ABC News documented a series of phone calls to families with terrifyingly specific threats. The unidentified callers knew exactly what the families were doing and even what they were wearing. The families say that the calls came in all hours of the night, threatening their children, their pets, their grandparents. Voicemails would arrive, playing recordings of their private conversations, including one with a local police detective. The caller knows what they're wearing and what they're doing, and after months of investigating, the police seemed powerless to stop them. This went on with the Kukendall family for months, who reported a caller with a scratchy voice threatening to cut their throats. When the Fircrest, Washington police tried to find the culprit, the calls were traced back to the Kukendall's own phones, even when they were turned off. It got even worse. The Kukendalls and 2 other Fircrest families told ABC News that they believed that the callers were using their own cell phones to spy on them. They said that the hackers knew their every move, where they were, what they were doing, and they had recorded private conversations and included a meeting with local detectives. And it doesn't say whether that case was solved. Next is a case that I have never covered because a ton of people have covered it, and I was obsessed with the Netflix thing when it came out, but you might have guessed. This is the case of the Watcher. After moving in to their $1.3 million dream home, a New Jersey family started receiving creepy threats from someone that identified themselves as the Watcher. The owner said that they received numerous letters from the mysterious person that claimed that the home had been the subject of their family for decades, and that that person was put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. The new owners had several children, and the letters asked, "Have you found what's in the walls? And I am pleased to know your names and the names of the young blood you have brought to me." The family was forced to flee from their home 7 years later, in 1981, he allegedly committed a murder in France, shooting and eating a fellow university student, Renee Harvelet. Issei creepily documented the entire experience with photographs, and he was captured by authorities once again while attempting to dispose of the rest of her body. He was deported back to Japan and committed to a mental institution. For reasons unknown, a psychologist in Japan declared that he was sane, and furthermore, a legal technicality involving the French government refusing to turn over the documents from his case meant that these charges of murder were dropped completely. He checked himself out of the mental hospital and has reportedly been seen walking the streets as a free man ever since. Issei Sagawa has become quite the controversial celebrity, writing over 20 books. According to Japan Today, he has most recently fantasized about an unnamed TV actress, saying that I'll catch a glimpse of her thigh and think that sure looks tasty, but I don't feel like I actually want to eat it, as I accomplish the act of cannibalism once there is no meaning to maintaining the desire for it anyway. In my book, I wrote that it was tasty, but that was not really true. I'd rather eat Kobe beef, but because I desired to consume human flesh for so long, I'd managed to convince myself that it would be delicious. Issei Sagawa is also referenced in the Rolling Stones song Too Much Blood, with the lyrics reading, and when he ate her, he took her bones to the bouillon. I'm sure I said that wrong. He is currently 73 and continues to live in Japan. And to this day, no one knows why